Hello, Guild Ballers. Welcome to Superior Strategy, the podcast where we break down the tactics, teams, and mind games behind our beloved game, Guild Ball. We're your hosts, Carlo.
And Jared, and we're the biggest Honor fanboys in the West. On today's episode, we're talking about the last steps of setup before you actually play the game. The choice to kick or receive, and deployment.
All right, so kicking or receiving. This decision is actually like a lot more important than most people think. Though most captains are designed to have play in both scenarios, some excel at either kicking or receiving. And today we're going to go real deep into this and discuss what determines what choice you should make, whether you want to kick or receive.
Yeah, and this choice will also heavily impact the tempo the game is played at, and which team is exerting the most pressure on the board state at a given time. One thing to mention is that not all guilds are created equal in this regard. To compensate for having fewer models to choose from, making them more predictable, minor guilds do get a +1 to starting initiative roll, which is what determines who gets to pick kicking or receiving, as well as an extra starting game plan card.
Okay, so without further ado, here we go. Some captains are better at kicking. Like here, we've got some pictured. Smoke is iconically one of the better captains at kicking. And, Scalpel also prefers to kick because she likes to put on that pressure at the end of the turn. And some captains are better at receiving. Corbelli likes to move his whole team when he has the ball. Pinvice, Pinvice Harriet combo is quite common, but some captains are more like flexible in what they can do.
Yeah, so the order is a good example of this subtlety. It may seem obvious that they always want to receive because they start with the ball of light, but because they start with the ball of light, they're actually reliable at being able to threaten early goals, regardless of whether they're kicking or receiving. The decision, if it's theirs to make, is going to be more dependent on whether the opponent's roster has a stronger option to stop them or to retaliate when they kick or receive, or it's up to personal preference. So we've prepared a couple of common choice interactions to highlight what this process can look like.
Yeah, like for example, when both teams have captains that prefer to kick, or a captain that prefers to receive, or both. We're gonna start with like alchemists versus farmers, and we'll be building that up. I mean, we did the drafting in a previous episode, and we're gonna lead up to a battle report that puts together all of this stuff. So here's a quick rundown and some examples of setups that you can encounter pregame. So, like I mentioned, we're going to start with Alchemist versus Farmers, but let's say both teams have a classic kick and receive captains, and then you choose normally, right? So, for example, here we got Alchemists with Smoke and Midas, and Farmers with Grange and Festival. Um, the obvious here is that there's no Thresher, which we know that Thresher prefers kicking. So here, both teams can do both. So it is interesting. The one that has the choice point, who wins a roll off, and who gets to decide. So
Yeah,
in
so
this, yeah,
as the player who won the initiative role in that draft setup that we were talking about last episode, we're going to continue this farmers versus alchemists thing um, uh, as our first battle report and all the steps leading up to it. As the player who won the role, it's my choice who kicks or and receives. I don't think Grange provides as much pressure into alchemists, and he's also just generally better when receiving. He has that kick aura and a lot of squaddies that really like to use the ball for mobility or momentum generation. Very defensive, close ranks kind of team with Grange. So I choose to kick with Festival instead of receive with Grange. Festival provides momentum-free healing, which counters some of the grind that alchemists can put on a team, and as well as bringing a lot of mobility, which will allow me to bypass the downside of being burned to reduce movement, um, or kind of go around some of the area uh, condition effects that alchemists have plenty of.
hmm
Um, And also it helps bypass unpredictable movement for certain situations. Farmers usually have enough 2-inch reach that it doesn't matter as much. Um, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the next scenario. The next scenario is, let's say both teams have kick receive captains, but in this case, one would choose tech instead. Like here we got Masons with Honor and Corbelli versus Hunters with Steeljaw and Scatha. Um, Steeljaw is primarily like a receiving captain. Like she likes you to come to her, so you have to walk through the traps and stuff. Um, and this is just like a miserable matchup for Masons. Like Steeljaw's traps giving weak point and bleed, as well as making Masons slower, is just awful to play against as a Masons player. She basically gets around all the Masons' strength, like their armor and their high hit points, but also picks on their weaknesses instead, like giving you a bunch of conditions and slowing them down. Masons are already inherently slow. So the Steeljaw player would probably want to pick Steeljaw regardless of the outcome of who wins this kickoff roll.
Yeah, so not only does Steeljaw feel great to play into Masons, but the other captain in this scenario is Scatha. She would normally tend to struggle into Masons because they have high armor and a lot of 2-inch reach, both of which are things that Hunter's models have some difficulty dealing with when they're attacking. Theron, if Theron was the other captain, due to having a better playbook and ranged character plays, has a little bit more play than Scatha into Masons. Um, but with Scatha, your options are a little bit more limited to just trying to use what limited ranged character plays you have to kind of shoot and scoot and play the space on the board. I don't think it's terrible for the Hunters player, but it's just a grindy slog of like positioning and mobility. It's a very cagey game of using the ranged character plays to outpace the Masons over the course of several turns, and then eventually scoring.
Yep. We're going to move to the next one, which is if both teams have flexible kick receiving captains and choose based on the guild matchup. For example, here we got Morts with Obulus and Scalpel versus Blacksmith, and I didn't want to put all the Blacksmith options here, so you get the point. They have the most captains; it would take up the entire screen. We do know, like as I said earlier, that Scalpel prefers kicking, but she's also the best answer that Morts have to Blacksmiths because Blacksmith like to cage up and she can split them up, and she also has built-in anatomical, so she ignores the armor and can spread the apprentices out of Sentinel, etc., etc., etc. Obulus is also not good into Blacksmiths because Burnish exists, and Burnish being able to say, hey, the models that are close to me cannot be puppet mastered once per turn, which is all he has, is tough, and it's just a tricky matchup for Morts. I think if I was playing Morts, I would just play Scalpel either way, but Obulus is also fine because he's got the 2-inch reach and he can just go like dance around and potentially just tackle the ball off Iron, who likes to have the ball. But if they play Hearth, they can give him reach. It's just tricky. I still think I play Scalpel, but you have to see it out.
This could be a really tough puzzle to figure out, but isn't that the way it usually is for Mortician's players? Both captains have play here, so it might come down to making a strategy based on a combination of things like the terrain, the squaddies in your roster, and the game plan cards. You might lean more into Obulus, maybe if you don't have more, if you don't have if you have Morn in your list instead of Scalpel, or if you have Cosset and you want to threaten being able to use Lure and Puppet Master on a model, because Burnish can only protect one a turn. There's play there. The Blacksmiths, on the other hand, have a little bit less to think about. You pretty much lock in Furnace, Cast, and Burnish most games, regardless of what the Morts player does.
Cast is the best mascot.
Yep, Cast is the best mascot in the game. And that gives them plenty of time in the draft to see what's going on and respond. And like we mentioned in the last episode, having that space in the draft to not have to commit to a plan can be a really strong form of kind of unsubstantial pressure, and make your opponent choose things before you have to.
Hmm. Now, we haven't talked about minor guilds, but let's say one team has a single captain. Like in this case, with Navs with Windfinder, into Butchers having Boar and Fillet. This is an interesting one because it's, a team that likes to score goals versus a team that likes to kill. But let's say Navs would win the role. Navs would almost always like to kick. They love using Fathom to have the kick pressure on turn one to try to get that turn one goal. She's one of the best models in the game at doing that. So here, the Butcher player has the choice. So Fillet is a really good kicking captain, but Navs have the smallest health pool in the game, and her bleed shenanigans and legendary means that she can potentially set up and kill multiple models in one turn. Like if they're playing Horizon, as if they're playing the box six, for example, with one blood range, she can deal so much damage, and potentially really hinder their ability to do that. But Boar has a 2-inch reach, and he's really good at either kicking or receiving. So the choice is in: do you want to do AoE damage with bleeds and stuff like that, and then you'd have to force Fathom to use your smelling salts to clear it all, or do you want to do lean towards Boar for single target damage to get rid of Azimuth? Either's fine, but I think I'd lean Boar here in this case.
Yeah, and I think it's still worth considering Fillet though.
Mm.
Navs can be deceptively hard to kill, even with their smaller health pools, due to things like Azimuth's slew of defensive abilities, Ebb only ever taking 2 damage from an action, and Fathom being a 5-0 model with that smelling salts and some good mobility, she can play a little bit further back. This one feels like more of a personal choice and execution for the Butchers player rather than a clear difference between the captains.
Yep. And then last but not least, we have what if both teams just have a single captain? Like in this case, which is Rats with Piper versus Falconers with Devana. In this case, let's say Rats win. The Rat player always wants to kick. There is maybe one or two matchups in the entire game that you would choose to receive. Piper is probably, I would probably say that he's the highest kickoff pressure model in the entire game for multiple reasons. He can, whoever comes and picks up that ball, he can push them off the pitch, or he can push them back into the team to kill, or he can threaten a turn one goal. Um, and like I said, it's maybe like against Order, which you don't want to give Order both balls on turn one because they can literally score 2 goals before the first turn's over. Um, but I'll go here and I do kicking to put the pressure on whatever sad model, even though Falconers do have a lot of answers to be able to safely retrieve the ball.
Yeah, yes, they do. So mostly in the form of like Matagi and Ikaros. Matagi is different from most models in the game in that he gets a free attack at range. The other models that have that you still have to pay influence. Um, but it allows him to
Mm.
generate momentum and pass the ball to get the dodge, while still keeping that one momentum to either counterattack or declare a defensive stance, based on what Piper chooses to do. And this can give you a lot of different options for how you retrieve the ball. Um, with Matagi on turn one specifically, Ikaros is fine at retrieving the ball, but it can be a little risky. With the Falconers, you usually want to keep him as an option to score. So if he's retrieving the ball, that's not really going to be on the table. Although based on deployment and the terrain on the map, um, and just where the ball gets scattered from the kickoff, you might have to do it. You might also just choose to not score on turn one, because giving the ball to the Rat Catchers player can give them a lot of momentum swing going into turn two. Um, because Scourge has some pretty good feet for a big boy, and can get that ball pretty quickly back into play for a 6-point activation with Piper or something.
Yep. But
Um,
yeah.
Honorable mention to Vet Hearn. Uh, for being able to teleport after counterattacks as well. Which if you put the ball on him or retrieve the ball with him, that can really screw with Piper's math on being able to take him out or push him somewhere.
Yeah, it makes it slightly more annoying. But right now we've only been talking about captains and what to think about before you start drafting. But let's not forget about talking about squaddies, for example. So there's some squaddies that are like way better when they receive, and then there's some squaddies that are way better when they kick. I've got some examples of them here. Champ, for example, me being a Masons player, I will strategically exclusively like to play champ when I'm receiving against certain teams that can provide really good like kickoff pressure, like Navs or a Shark or something like that, because she can retrieve the ball easily with walking twice and then like pass the ball to my ball holding model, let's say Mallet, and then put close control on them. So then that's a pretty good first activation thing to go pick up the ball, toss it over. And then you got the hat people with their aura, so you can get 8 million momentum by passing the ball around. You know, whether it be in order or in pit vice engineers, you can do the bounce back pass, the Willow machine pass, and then I've got O'Brisket in here as well. O'Brisket is not seen very often because Vet Brisket is, really good, but O'Brisket, you would mainly want to play her when you receive so that she can score your goal and get you 2 influence for the rest of the game. And if she does that for you, then that's her accomplishing her goal. Literally her goal.
And then Bushel doesn't really do much without the ball. Like she as a Reaper provides 1 influence to the team instead of 2, so she's not even a good battery. And all she does is kick the ball and then take the ball back, unless you're going for a goal run with her, which you can do, but hard to do when you kick the ball to the other person.
Yeah, receiving, of course, but harder to do kicking, of course. But yeah, what about the models that are better at kicking?
The models that are better at kicking, as we mentioned, Fathom is a huge kicking threat. She's just mobility, 2-inch reach, re-rolls. It's just a very solid package.
Tackle double dodge.
Yep. Vet Decimate is the classic taxi. Find the person that retrieved the ball and escort them back to your team.
Like Piper Light.
Shank is a good kicking model. A lot of players tend to prefer playing him as the kicking model himself because he has, similar to Fathom, really large threat range. And even if you don't end up scoring a goal with him on turn 1, he has a lot of reliable momentous damage results that he can take and threaten setting up for turn 2 pretty easily. Vitriol has a free charge, free clone, 2-inch melee, tackle on 1. Very good stuff. And then Strongbox is another honorable mention. Some Union players like kicking with Strongbox just to get a few extra free inches of movement out of them.
Yeah, him being movement 3 makes it tough.
Yeah, and it gets them into position to be ready to fight on turn 2.
Mm-hmm. But after you choose whether you kick or receive and start drafting, there's one thing you've got to do now, which is deploy.
You do have to deploy.
So yeah, you should be very careful when you're deploying because bad deployment can potentially cost you the game. It sounds silly, but it's the truth. If, for example, you deploy your models while receiving and you can't get the ball, like they do a daisy cutter kick that's like 1 inch over the line, and you deployed poorly and you deployed your slow model on that side, and he's the only one that's close enough to the ball, and he can't get there or she can't get there. Then the opponent can grab the ball and rob you of your entire strength while receiving, which is the ball. This is one of like several things that you would want to consider while deploying.
Yeah, and it's also not only super important to get the ball, but to also be able to protect it and use it. It's a tool.
Hmm.
It's a great tool for mobility when you receive, not just for scoring goals. In fact, as we mentioned with Bushel, that's kind of her niche with receiving. In fact, there are some games that I choose to receive just so that I have the ball to outmaneuver my opponents with their threat ranges. I do this a lot with Falconers, where I can like use ranged character plays and ranged attacks, move up, make the attack, and then pass the ball and dodge backwards. Um, because 10 to 11 inches can be a really hard range for models to threaten back with.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so positioning yourself to make the most use out of the tool is the key to deployment and executing a strong turn one.
Hmm. So
Um,
some other
Go
things
ahead.
to consider are like you when you're kicking, you choose the model you're kicking with intentionally. So like Smoke, we talked about her earlier. Smoke likes to be the model kicking because it gets her a little bit further up the field. And whether or not you score a goal into Smoke and she can get a clap back goal and then also spread a bunch of conditions and throw out a bunch of infuses, and there's a bunch of damage that you have no answer to because she's the last model activating. Or
Mhm.
Fathom, because like if you put the ball somewhere she can get to with a chance to get a goal, she's going to take it, and with her rerolls and mobility, she's very likely to be able to do so. That's really like when you kick, you want to draft the model that you want to kick with, whether it's your captain or a squatty.
Yeah, another a good example for that is like Harry the Hat or Harriet the Hat. Um, when you kick with those models, you can get that aura into a useful place for the turn. It's less relevant with
Mm.
Harriet because you don't get a ball, but with Order, being able to kick with Harry and get that aura all the way up the field so that your ball of light shenanigans reach further on turn one can be really big. Um, Also, just models that you want to move up the pitch. Like sometimes you just want to get Mallet closer to the fight.
Because he's slow. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Another thing you want to like we said earlier, is have models that can retrieve the ball. So like your opponent, let's say, is kicking from a central position, which means they can kick the ball either to the left or to the right. Well, you need a model on either side that can go pick it up. And you want models that are good at retrieving the ball. Like I mentioned, Champ is excellent at retrieving the ball, but you also have models like Mother, which can, use the Nest Marker to pull it towards them, or Dirge, which is like extremely fast, ignores terrain, and can just go get that ball and kick it back. And even if the kick's not accurate, at least it's in your half, and the only model that they can pick on is Dirge, which is like, okay, cool, come punch this 5-0 model that takes momentum away if you kill it, right? It only gives you 1 point. Like Jared said, Matagi's really good at going there with the ball. Icaros can jog twice. Just models like that can go grab the ball safely. Like if you're playing hunters, you can put, or sorry, not hunters, falconers. You can put Icaros on one side and Matagi on the other, and then wherever the opponent kicks the ball, you'll have an answer to go pick it up, right? So there's.
yeah, and then another thing to keep in mind is like you also don't want to split the difference too hard, because if they then just kick it straight down the middle, and the only person in the middle to get the ball with is somebody that you want to activate later in the turn, you'll potentially mess yourself up there as well.
Mhm. So yep, and then speaking of kicking left or right, that's another thing that you want to consider when you're kicking is let's say you deploy fully to the left, like you as a kicking player, maybe you're playing rats and you kick off to the side, and you kick it really close to the table edge, hoping that you'll get like a little daisy cutter right in front of Piper so that you can punish the model by pushing them off the pitch or towards your team or whatever you want to do. So that you want to kick to deny access to the ball, right? So if you know that they're going to struggle to get the ball or have to overextend to get the ball, then you want to kick it and try to place it in an uncomfortable position for the receiving team to collect.
Yeah, and so like positionally denying access, like by staying to the side is a good one, but also kicking the ball towards the model that wants to receive the ball later in the turn, like that Icarus that we were talking about. That
Like if
can be
yeah,
a strong tool to deny a goal on turn one.
yeah, so like if they have 4 influence on Icaros, it's obvious that they want Icaros to score the goal. So if you kick the ball towards Icaros, where only Icaros can get it, then they have to use that influence to get the ball. Something
That
like that.
influence gets placed after the kick.
Yes, but like, you know,
Yeah, it it's it's good to know which models threaten what kind of actions later in the turn, and then force them to make decisions they don't want to make.
correct. But I'm future planning, so like, if I yeah. Anyway, I can play mind games on my opponent and have them put influence on Icaros before the ball has landed. That's just
Yeah, of course.
one of the mind games I play.
In your
Also,
mind.
yes, of course, in my own brain. Using terrain is also important, whether it be as the kicking model or as the receiving model. So as the
Yeah.
kicking model, you can walk up and backstop into terrain to prevent ballista from shooting you or something, or you can use the terrain to protect you from incoming attacker that wants to score a goal. And then you can use terrain as the kicking model to like potentially backstop the ball because it will collide with terrain. So if there's a piece of terrain that's close enough to you that you want to try to bank off of it, to make them overextend, that's another strategy. And then using terrain to protect you, or kicking also as a kicking model, kicking towards like rough ground, so they have to go over rough ground and might not be able to reach the ball. But
Mhm.
also inversely, as the receiving player, um, using you trying to get that terrain to your advantage with the models you receive with as well.
Yeah, and another lesser understood interaction is using terrain to, I guess, front stop your models into teams like Morticians, where they have access to lure and Puppet Master. Puppet Master as a jog can still go around the corner of the terrain, um, but abilities like lure tell you to go directly towards, and the core rules of the game prevent you from moving an opponent's model over terrain.
Mm-hmm.
So the lure gets stopped by even the smallest corner of a wall, or of a barrel or something. So you can protect yourself with that as well. Influence allocation is also something to keep in mind on turn one, on the deployment. You have Most teams have 13. Some have less. Like farmers usually start with less than 13. Um, I think blacksmiths have 12.
Yeah,
Um, and then teams with models like Boar
or Cena
or Cena.
casket.
Um, yeah, some of the other models only bring one influence to the team. So you have however many you have, but knowing how much you need to spend to set up, to get the ball, to execute your plan for the turn, that's an important part of deployment, so that you know where to put the models based on how much influence you want to give them later.
Yeah, and also really important is to keep track of your ranges of your character plays and your auras. So when you're deploying classic butchers, right? You're playing Cinnamon. You place her on the side so she can go collect the ball, pass. You give her 3 influence, right? So you pass the ball and then you put get set bake on something that if you want to deploy your models tight so that they get the most use out of get set bake. So maybe all your models can get the +2, um,
Rivet.
or a rivet, for example, being within 2 of as many models so they can pull up on the toe. Some any sort of character plays like that.
And this is not foreboding at all, but positioning models with festival in a way that they'll be able to make use of the legendary on turn one can be relevant. Um, what else? Matagi. I know we've talked about Matagi a lot, but he is really is a model with a lot of like flexibility in this portion of the game. But your Hawkeye attack is range 6. But Harriers can be placed at range 7. So you can take your Hawkeye attack, dodge back an inch, place that Harrier down. It's range 4 plus a 3-inch template, so you can tag them at range 7, and then pass the ball and dodge backwards. So making sure you space things correctly can be very important.
Yeah.
And then you also want to make sure you know, and this one comes with a lot of learning, is knowing how aggressive you can or can't be on turn 1. Like, can you just load up a 6 influence captain and kick with them to go, last first, turn 1 into turn 2?
In the case
Or
of
do you
smoke
need
or
to
fillet, right?
smoke or fillet, scalpel? You can do it with honor, but it's a little less necessary. Hammer likes to kick and do that. Thresher likes to kick and do that. There's a lot of captains that's why they're kicking captains, is because they have that pressure.
Tapper.
Yeah, Tapper. Although Tapper usually wants to go first to set up, but that's still like, it provides a lot of tempo on the board. Is if you leave somebody in the wrong spot, that's free momentum and free victory points for the opponent.
Yep.
And it can get real dicey out there.
And then, yeah, so hopefully you guys learned some little tips and tricks to think about in the pregame sequence. We're going to move on here, and we're going to see what one of our community members has to say about us. So
Yeah.
I know it says rookies on the pitch, and this guy's not necessarily a rookie, but, you know, he's a great guy. This Runic Elk, Mr. Rutsky himself, has this question for us.
Question for the hosts here. First time listener, first time caller. Are your bases for your models naked or are they painted? Let me know.
Yeah, so obviously this is a really important question. My bases,
vital.
yes, vital. My bases are all color coded, so if you see my carrying case and I've got multiple teams, all of my teams have a different color rim on their bases. Got green on my Alchemists, I got gray on my Masons, I think I got black on my Engineers. What else do I have? I have blue on my Fish, red on my Butchers, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, and like I picked this hobby up, this habit up from Carlo here. Painting, my farmers have an orange rim, my Masons have a blue rim. Order, when I finish painting them, will have probably a purple or yellow rim. My Falconers have like a teal, like a dark teal, because that's the color I went with for their main color. I think it looks kind of silly to just have plastic showing, you know?
Well, you know, like, who plays unpainted models? Like, just
Nobody ever has.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. If you play unpainted models, and you should pick up painting, and maybe if you guys ask enough, I'll do some tutorials on what I do to paint my models.
And my tutorials will be bad, but they'll be there.
With that, we're going to move into closing, guys. Thanks for listening to Superior Strategy, the podcast where we tell you that influence is allocated before the kick. Just kidding. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your local gaming group and let us know which guild you started with.
Next episode, we'll have our first battle report to highlight the concepts from these first few episodes. We'll combine all of the things. As we've mentioned, it's going to be that Alchemist versus the Farmers game. And we'll just kind of showcase some of what we've been talking about.
And until next time, roll dice.
Play nice.
Don't forget your monkey.
Yep.
We'll see you next time, guys.